The first full week of the Sisu Tour stages 2 and 3 and continuation of my quest to challenge the best ZWIFT riders in the Sprint Championship. That's what this video is going to be all about. Only one of those two stages was relevant for the Ultimate Sprint Showdown though. The stage number 2 was an individual time trial on the croissant loop, and that means that none of the sprint segments on this route counted towards the sprint rankings. However, even though this stage was kind of irrelevant for my goals in this series, it was an opportunity for me to test my fitness against the clock, so I intended to go all out. But I actually almost didn't even start. For some reason, on the day of the race, I've had horrible stomach cramps and I was actually thinking whether I can even do it. But not doing it would mean dropping from the race classifications, and that's something I really didn't want. So I decided I would at least give it a try, and if it was bad, I would simply ride the course easy. To start, I selected 285 watts as my power target with the intention to adjust based on how I feel. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. Once we started, I got immediately into the race mode and forgot I had any stomach issues in the first place. I may have felt a little more tired than I would normally feel, but all things considered, it was a pretty normal experience. And it went like this for about 2/3 of the race. I was able to keep up the steady power and pace evenly. During the ride, I was drinking the electrolyte and carb mix that I've been using lately, and although I love the taste, on this day it was a little too rough on my poor stomach, so for the last about 5 minutes I had to somewhat slow down. This decreased my overall average power for the race to 282 watts, but still that was pretty close to my original target. The finish was at the long cobbled sprint, and although there wasn't any bonus for the sprint classification there, I pushed to around 400 watts for this segment and I finished fairly strong. I finished the time trial on 39th spot out of 45 A riders with the time of 18 minutes and 45 seconds, and like I said, there was no effect into the sprint classification. The second race in this week couldn't have been more different. The route was Knights of the Roundabout, about 55 kilometers, petit KOM climb, and most importantly, 6 unique sprint segments for me to tackle. And it is important to emphasize the unique part, because there were 11 sprint segments in total. And it was up to me to decide on which ones I would do the efforts, whether when doing all for the first time, where I would be likely riding with a faster group, and also where I would be likely the freshest, or if I should spread out the efforts throughout the route. Based on my experience from the first race, I chose the first approach, as the first 6 sprints were all unique, and only after that some of them would repeat. I told myself that I would simply destroy myself on those sprint segments, and once I successfully made it through all 6, I could then finish the race at an easy pace. The most important question was how far I would be able to ride with the fastest group. Obviously the best case scenario would be to ride through all 6 segments with them, but since there was an aqueduct KOM after the second one, I wasn't too optimistic about that. And once again, the first sprint of the day was the 800 meter long uphill sprint segment on the cobbles. I started here at the front of the group and slowly ramped up the power as the segment progressed. When we got to the straight portion, it was clear that the best sprinters were actually going for it hard. I was tempted to contest here, but I didn't want to risk losing contact with the group if I went too hard, so I paced myself but still improved my time on this segment compared to the last week. Once again, the start of the race was super fast, and that meant I would start the second sprint with my heart rate deep in 170s. This one is a very short one though, so that's not a big deal. You only need to push hard for about 10 seconds here. Once again, I wasn't the best sprinter here, but did a very satisfactory effort with power exceeding 11 watts per kilo. After this sprint, the pace at the front actually got ever so slightly easier, which was perfect because that's exactly what I've been training for lately. About once or twice a week I've been doing interval training, where I've been switching between hard intervals and recovery intervals, but the recovery intervals are still at a pretty high power, about 210 watts. The goal of these workouts is to teach my body to rest and recover while still doing fairly moderate pace, and here I could have actually felt the positive effects. But I felt that my presence in the front group was running out of time, because what was coming next was the aqueduct KOM, and even though it is a very easy climb, I would say it is still enough to drop me if the strong guy started pacing. I was approaching it with open mind, but when I saw figures of about 8 watts per kilo appearing at the start, I didn't want to participate in that, especially that this was not even a sprint segment. So I dropped from the front, but that meant I was on my own now, and if I wanted to compete for the next sprint, I couldn't be alone. The momentum is way too strong for me to miss it. I saw there was another group coming that was about 25 seconds behind me, and so I decided to adjust my strategy 100% for the next sprints. I would wait for this group and recover in the process. And it ended up being a good decision. I recovered well, but what's more, I noticed Douglas Cameron waiting for that group as well, and if you need a guy to give you a lead out for a sprint, it doesn't get much better than with Douglas. The guy is sprinting powerhouse. But I almost made a fatal mistake. I started ramping up the speed back too late, and the group blasted right past me, and I really needed to go into red to catch up.
Oh! No!
But at the start of the sprint segment, I was roughly where I wanted to be. I may have not have the speed that I wanted coming into it, but I was right on Douglas's wheel and I knew it would help me big time. And it did. I did a fairly good power on this segment and I had a group to continue with. And now it was time for nice 6 kilometers of zone 2 or zone 3 recovery before the next 2 sprints that are basically back to back. Right before the first one, I found myself at the front of the group, which for obvious reasons I didn't want, so I eased up a little bit before punching it really hard for the segment itself. Quick recovery and it was time to go again. Neither of those segments are that hard on their own, but it is their placement in close proximity that makes them so difficult. I pushed to power again and before too long my 5th sprint of the day was over. And what was left for me now was one last task. Survive the intestines with this group in order to arrive at the harbor sprint, which was the last relevant sprint segment for me, with the group momentum. And although I felt a lot of the fatigue in my legs, I managed to do that and I really plan to end this race with a bang. And although it wasn't as impressive as some of my sprints that I'm doing on relatively fresh legs, it was about everything I had at that point. And just like that, my race was over, which admittedly is a weird thing to say with 29k still to go, but it was true. My work was done for the day. I achieved exactly what I wanted and there was no point for me to kill myself further in this race. I rode with the group for a little more while, but at the next sprint banner the group increased the pace and basically rode off, so I had to finish the race on my own, which honestly didn't bother me since we were chatting on the stream anyway. By the end of the race, I joined another group of guys and I thought it would be hilarious to make them hurt, so I set 500 watts pace, but then I quickly noticed no one was responding and so I eased up again. My placement in this race was for obvious reasons a total disaster, but that's obviously not the thing that matters here. The question is, what about my placement in the sprint championship? And I'm happy to say that my placement is still very good. After stage number 3, I'm on 16th place out of 86 A riders that finish all 3 stages, currently losing 36 seconds to Nando, who is the current leader, and considering how he does the sprints, probably also a future winner. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and if you missed the episode 1 in this series, make sure to watch it right here.